Hey, how you doing? Oh, gosh, I don't know where to begin, but I guess I will remind everybody who may have forgotten that when I started asking questions about the pesticides and the herbicides and the fungicides, the child cancer rate, the laws that were put in place, and why wasn't the mandates of those laws being honored here in Napa, and the circular responses that I was getting from various public officials. And I took my son to Washington, D.C. I took my son to sit down with the deputy ag commissioner in 2021, I believe it was. Could have been, yeah. Actually, it was 2022. And that kind of gave me the indication that at times you're not going to get a solid, straight answer. And it gave me the feeling that some people are willing to sidestep public safety to benefit a smaller group than the totality of the people that live in the valley. That's the way it came across. And I've talked to a lot of people. I've been to the oncology department at UCSF, flew to Washington, D.C., went all over. And in 2021, there was something that happened, and I went to Napa County, asked for their help, went to Kaiser first, tried to keep things all under wraps and everything. It's a complicated circumstance. But when it just got to a point where it was like, hey, I need to ask these people who are tasked with that, that's their duty, to perform that duty, they came up with excuses and reasons and justification as to why not to do that. And so I started pressing forward with inquiries. I went to the ombudsman. I've reached out to the inspector general. I went everywhere. And in 2022, it just got worse. Later in 2021, things got worse, but in 2022, it was just like enough was enough. But I understood that Napa does things a certain way relative to their own people. And when it comes to like kind of dusting things under the rug, unfortunately, that happens, I would say, because I saw it in this circumstance. And my duty as a father is to protect my son. And as mentioned before, my first wife's father was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by people in Mexico, right? So I don't like those people, don't like those circumstances. And my spouse kept taking my son down into that area of operation with her brother, who was actively involved, as she stated under oath here in the Napa County Courthouse, even after she knew that he was involved in activity that could put him and her and my son in a dangerous circumstance on a phone that was in her name. So the danger was real. The circumstances were real, and they have been since day one. And when I went to these people, they said they needed proof. I furnished it to them, but from the outset, they've done nothing but sit on their fingers and do nothing. And so I had to go into the courtroom, and as a father and as a concerned parent, man, it's been brutal. The circumstances, the stress, it's just, you're reliving the trauma every time you go back inside that courtroom. And I protest. I've protested nonviolently since the beginning, whether it's here, Washington, D.C., and I state as much in my videos. And anytime I go into a public space, I always record the interactions. You can't do it in the courtroom, but all these other public spaces, it's imperative, because who you're filing complaints against, you have to anticipate that there may be recourse or retaliation, which in this circumstance, that's exactly what it was. And so with my concerns, I went to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 2022, in writing, on the phone. I went to local law enforcement, to include the Napa District Attorney's Office, Everybody else, child welfare services, the county supervisors, admin, you name it, done went there, done did it. But as things kept moving along, now I was able to secure the safety of my son through like hectic circumstances in that courtroom. But now that issue's come up again, and I just had a bad feeling that the people who are sworn to uphold the Constitution, my friends died to defend the Constitution, my brothers honored their oath and gave their life to defend the Constitution. These people are supposed to uphold the Constitution, and it is the supreme law of the land. So to infringe on somebody's rights for exercising a peaceful, constitutional, nonviolent expression of discourse with what's going on, the corruption that's obvious, them trying to dust everything under the rug when I've asked them to protect my son, it's not acceptable. So it was on, I think, 126. I got to check the date. I was on the phone with the Federal Bureau of Investigation because I initiated another inquiry to request for oversight because of my concern of retaliation by the local county officials. I expressed everything in detail, and yet again, I've gone back to request to speak to the director. I spoke to Sonoma County. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do. And then again, I went to the Napa County District Attorney's office and sat down with one of the DAs. I don't know if there's a bunch of them or what, but I'm not going to say the name of the individual because she'll know who she is. But I sat down with her and expressed the same concern. I'd been threatened since the outset. That's been a factor here. And at the same time, like I said, I went to the federal government to request oversight because I didn't have confidence that the county would do anything, or how would you say, or they maybe even retaliate for me exercising these rights. And on February 20th, there was an incident that happened, and that was just like the final straw right there, you know. But like I said, I'd been in contact with oversight and expressed that this was more than likely going to be the outcome, going off of what I had experienced that I should not have had to experience to date. And so my recourse is going to be the proper one. As it always, I go file the complaint. You know, I request recourse through the proper channels. I went to the library as I said I would. I typed out the complaint, I faxed it over, I got all the documentation, and then I went to San Francisco and I followed up, and I went over to the federal building and I sat down and I interviewed with federal agents. Then days later, I get this notification that expresses that the DA's office sent somebody down there, and they're alleging one thing. There was a camera set up right there. There was 2 cameras. Pay attention for the cameras, because I film all this stuff. Because if you do not, they will simply insert. They'll put people that you would think that could be trusted, and they'll say, "Oh no, this person says that this person said this." Instead of actually, they could have walked up and filmed me, right? That would have made more sense if they were really trying to get me to say something. But I film it, so because this is what I've had to deal with throughout this whole circumstance, is they'll just have somebody, like they'll walk somebody in and say, "Oh no, this person heard this person." That's what? No, why don't you get a recording, you know? Because I've documented everything from the outset. And I have those. And I've given those over to the relevant oversight. So to see that Napa County District Attorney's Office to partake, working with the person who I asked them to look into over the threats, and then to lie and say that I said something that I didn't say, well, that's an infringement yet again on my constitutional rights, because they're trying to use their collective power to press down and oppress my First Amendment constitutionally protected right and my 14th Amendment right to protect my son. So now, so the complaint's going through, there's a process that's taking place, and now I have to file a civil complaint against them for abridging my constitutionally protected rights in Napa. Keep in mind, folks, we're talking about my family members have been kidnapped from their home and murdered in another county in California. And these people have just pushed aside safety and danger for their own personal reasons. Well, I'm assuming so. That's what other excuse do they got? Oh, wait a second. The individual in question is a county employee. Maybe that's the reason. Yeah, more than likely that's the reason. And that's what I've been saying, is that when it comes to one of their own, they will set aside the right and the wrong. So I went to the federal government. On that day, I was sitting here in this car. I'm on the phone with the FBI discussing this, saying exactly my concerns, and some guy's banging on my window, and I tell him, hey man, I'm on the phone. And then another guy comes over, bangs on the window. I tell him, hey, I'm on the phone with the FBI, man, can you come back? And then I see them people's names on that indictment later on. Not that they're tethered to this circumstance that I'm dealing with, but it just shows this culture of corruption in Napa, that certain people are allowed to do whatever they want. And if you ask that your you utilize your constitutionally protected rights, that some people will use their official capacities to try to tether together, to try to hide a complicated narrative and their wrongdoing by trying to negate and abridge your constitutionally protected rights. So Napa County, I'm taking action non-violently through the legal process. As you can see, I've already done that. And I alerted the federal authorities that I was concerned that you guys were retaliating against me for doing so. And that's exactly what y'all did. So keep in mind, I record all those things. And so lying in these documents, I mean, it's just, it shows what y'all are capable of.